and more, the U.S. is looking north to Canada to meet the challenges of importing foreign oil. We already import more oil from Canada than from any other country. And the Canadian province of Alberta holds the world's third largest oil reserves, 170 billion barrels, an amount that theoretically could meet all U.S. oil demand for almost a quarter century. Thing is, it's an unusually thick kind of oil, called oil sands crude by the industry, labeled tar sands oil by others. And the plan is to build a pipeline to get it to Texas refineries on the Gulf Coast. That pipeline project has ignited one of the biggest environmental battles of the year.
No pipeline! No pipeline!
From the streets of Nebraska
Hey ho, tar sands no!
to the president's doorstep this summer, passions have been ignited over TransCanada's proposed Keystone XL pipeline. At the White House, more than 1,000 arrests, including Hollywood celebrities.
It's not if there will be a spill, it's when there will be a spill. They are inevitable with pipelines.
It's a battle that's also been playing out over the airwaves. The oil industry declaring that Canadian oil is critical for America.
That's good for our country's energy security and our economy.
Opponents, again, with Hollywood heavyweights weighing in,
all that new oil will worsen global warming.
warning of an environmental disaster just waiting to happen.
It would pump millions of gallons of the dirtiest oil in the world, 2,000 miles across America's heartland.
Members of Congress have also been duking it out over the pipeline.
Yes, it's the dirtiest oil in the world.
This is real energy security.
It's either going to come here or it's going to go to China or someplace else. Why not rely on our friend the Canadians, create the jobs here, and offset some of the oil that otherwise would come from someplace that's not nearly so friendly?
You need to have jobs, but they need to be safe, clean jobs that are good for the future of the earth and good for the people that are being employed as well.
The heated debate over the Keystone XL pipeline is about to come to a head. The Obama administration is expected to decide by the end of the year whether the pipeline can proceed, a decision to be made by the White House because there's an international border involved. The U.S. already gets more than 1 million barrels a day of oil sands crude from Canada. And if pipeline company TransCanada gets the go-ahead for Keystone XL, it could bring another 830,000 barrels a day across the border. TransCanada already operates Keystone 1 from Alberta to refineries in the American Midwest. The XL would supplement that line, adding 1,700 miles of pipe from Alberta through 6 states, Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and ending at refineries on the Texas Gulf Coast. But we begin here at home in Nebraska, where the controversy over the $7 billion proposed pipeline is broiling, as you'll see in this Energy Now Spotlight.
It kind of represents what my parents spent a lifetime to get put together.
When farmer Randy Thompson looks out over his family's land, he worries about what the future might hold.
And the pipeline would come across just west of those trees down here, and it cut right through the middle of this patch.
So it's going to go through the crops and through your pasture?
Yes.
The pipeline would carry extra thick crude oil infused with toxic chemicals like benzene. And a potential rupture is what concerns Thompson the most.
You have a spill or a leak of some kind, it's going right into our water supply.
And the water supply is for drinking?
Drinking, irrigating our crops and watering our livestock. You know, it's everything to an operation like this.
And Thompson says it's not just his farm that could be at risk. Such a spill could contaminate the underground Ogallala aquifer that runs from South Dakota to Texas. It provides 2 million people with drinking water and 30% of the agricultural fresh water in the entire country. And then there are Nebraska's environmentally sensitive sandhills 60 miles north, where Thompson used to ranch. Even without leaks, he says, just locating the pipeline there would cause significant damage.
That may be an unfixable problem because of the wind erosion blowing the sand up there. It's going to be very difficult to get that all revegetated because it's taken thousands of years to get that grass to grow on that sand.
So, at 63 years old,
it can be done with some willpower.
Randy Thompson has become an unlikely activist, headlining grassroots protests against the Keystone XL pipeline.
We're not going to contaminate the drinking water.
More than 1,000 miles north in Calgary, Alberta, the heart of Canada's oil business, TransCanada President Russ Girling says the pipeline doesn't threaten Thompson's land.
The facts are, pipelines are the most safest mode of moving crude oil and crude oil products around North America. The incidence rate is very small relative to moving it in other forms, whether that be by barge or by rail, by truck, are the other sort of major forms. And by orders of magnitude, pipelines are safer.
Still, TransCanada is feeling the fallout of other companies' oil spills. This July, an ExxonMobil spill tainted Montana's Yellowstone River. And crude is still being cleaned up more than a year after an Enbridge spill in Michigan's Kalamazoo River. And in little over a year in operation, TransCanada's existing Keystone 1 had over a dozen leaks. How do you explain, Keystone 1?
I have to be clear, is that we have had 0 breaks in the pipeline itself below the ground. When it comes above the ground, we've had some seals and some valves break. We've had one spill that was somewhere around 500 barrels. The balance have been 10 barrels or less.
From pipeline leak sensors that trigger automatic shutdowns to restoring vegetation along pipeline routes, Girling says TransCanada has bent over backwards to be environmentally responsible.
This is a picture of the pipelines that cross the aquifer today. Thousands and thousands of miles. We're adding another 243 miles across the aquifer.
But just to get away from all of that controversy, why don't we just go all the way around?
It's longer, which means more ripping up the ground, more environmental impact, more landowners that you're going to impact.
For all the concerns about the environmental impact, the pipeline's economic impact could be enormous. TransCanada claims the project will create nearly 140,000 jobs.
It's going to be a huge deal.
Back in Nebraska, labor union leader Ron Kaminsky says Keystone 1 proved how valuable such a project can be.
Think about all of the people that come into that town to live, to rent a hotel, to go eat at the local restaurant, to drink at the local bar, buy groceries from the local grocery store. Those are all offshoot jobs that really aren't accounted for. With construction of the first Keystone line, it was a big economic boom for those towns.
TransCanada says the vast majority of landowners along the proposed Nebraska route have signed agreements allowing the pipeline on their property.
It's not a very long distance on my land.
Ron Johnson is one of them and says the issue is really about American sacrifices to get oil from the Middle East.
I bought this place and hope to give it to my kids. This is my dream, and I don't want anything to spoil it, but at the same time, I don't want kids giving up their lives for oil because I have a dream.
Johnson has already agreed to lease his land rights to TransCanada. But neighbor Randy Thompson is holding out and hopping mad, saying that TransCanada has essentially resorted to bullying tactics. We will initiate eminent domain only as a last resort, where good faith efforts have not resulted in a voluntary agreement.
Well, in other words, if I don't accept their offer, then they call that negotiation, see? They make the offer. I mean, they say, here's how much we're going to pay you. You either take it or we're going to take you to court. And a lot of landowners have signed off because they're intimidated by a huge corporation. I mean, it's like facing off with a giant.
A giant that is confident it will win. You've already waited 30-plus months for approval from the United States. Is there a point where you're just going to say, listen, forget Keystone XL?
Life is hard sometimes. I think most Americans are supportive of what's logical. They want us to do it well, and we will.
It's going to happen, yes or no?
Absolutely.
The White House decision on the pipeline is expected by the end of the year, but the final showdown might come down to Nebraska farm country and Randy Thompson. Are you willing to face off with this giant in court? Would you do it?
Damn right I will. That's what our courts are for.
Randy Thompson showed me TransCanada's offer of about $17,900, a one-time payment for building the pipeline through his land. Now, he calculates that comes to $1 a day for him over the line's expected 50-year lifespan. As he said, not a very good commission.